The Boston Red Sox and the Atlanta Braves just made a huge deal with 7-time All-Star Chris Sale heading from Boston to Atlanta in exchange for a prospect. This is a huge deal that is going to shape the future of both these franchises. The Red Sox are in a weird spot where they're trying to rebuild but also not necessarily out of contention, but the Braves are going all in, getting a star starting pitcher with some injury concerns to really go ahead and make their postseason push. Chris Sale has been with the Red Sox for 6 seasons since 2017 and has been a star starting pitcher ever since he came into the major leagues at age 21 back in 2010. The Braves are getting a very good pitcher. If he can maintain the form that he's had across his healthy seasons, there's no doubt in my mind that he will be a force to be reckoned with in an already potent Atlanta rotation. While the Red Sox gave away their most likely opening day starting pitcher after the acquisition of Lucas Giolito yesterday, the Braves gave up Vaughn Grissom, a former top prospect who will likely slot in as the opening day second baseman for the Red Sox. This trade was made because the Braves are going all in, and you can never have enough pitching when you head into the postseason, and although Chris Sale has some injury concerns, there's no doubt he's one of the best players in all of baseball. Vaughn Grissom did not have a home in Atlanta after the acquisition of Jared Kelenic. He just wasn't going to have playing time, and he now has ample ability to do so with availability in right field and second base likely to be taken over, and he has the ability to play both effectively, so now he's going to play most likely every day with the Red Sox. In this video, we're going to examine this trade that happened literally minutes ago and see exactly what the benefit is for both the Red Sox and for the Braves in Chris Sale going over to Atlanta and former top prospect Vaughn Grissom heading over to Boston. If you like this video, if you go ahead, drop a like or comment, and subscribe to the channel, it really helps a lot. Not only do you get more content from me, but other awesome baseball creators out there where you can expand your love for America's pastime. Without further ado, let's go ahead and explore this Chris Sale for Vaughn Grissom trade that just happened this morning and dive into exactly what it means for both teams. From 2012 to 2018, Chris Sale might have been the most dominant pitcher in all of baseball, with 7 straight All-Star Game selections, 7 straight finishes in the top 6 of Cy Young voting, 5 of those in the top 5. It just makes sense as to why he was dominant. A top 10 MVP finish in 2017, leading the league in complete games twice, strikeouts twice. He is just a dominant pitcher, and he is someone who, for a long time, people thought would be a Hall of Famer. Injuries have derailed his career a little bit recently, but he's still a very good pitcher and someone that the Braves are going to rely on heavily. He was originally acquired by the Red Sox from the White Sox back after the 2016 season, where the Red Sox traded away star prospects Yoan Moncada and Michael Kopech, which haven't really panned out as well as the White Sox had hoped for Sale's services, along with a couple other players who haven't really made a huge impact. At the time, this trade was huge. A lot of these prospects were expected to make huge major league impacts, and they just haven't. And it makes sense. Right now, Chris Sale has the highest strikeout per 9 rate of any player in history across their career. That is just crazy impressive and goes to show you what value he had going into the 2016 offseason when he was going to be traded from the White Sox. Now his value is obviously a little depreciated. He's 34 right now, going to be 35 in the 2024 season, and an extensive list of injuries that have really hampered his career a little bit. But if he can maintain that form, there's no doubt in anyone's mind that he will be a dominant pitcher and someone you're not going to want to face in the postseason. Sale put up really solid numbers, even if they don't match what he had done his entire career. A 6-5 record, a 4.3 ERA, and 125 strikeouts in just over 100 innings pitched. His underlying metrics like FIP and SIERA show that he was a little bit better pitcher than what his ERA suggested, so he's definitely not a bad pitcher by any means. He's a very solid pitcher going into his age 35 season, and that's what the Braves are getting. You look at what they did with someone like Charlie Morton, and I wouldn't be shocked to see similar success in Atlanta with Chris Sale. His StatCast data for 2023 is also promising. He was still 92nd percentile in chase percentage. I'm sure we've all seen that wipeout slider that has just dominated hitters. Whiff rate, top 75%. Strikeout rate, top 88%. Walk rate, top 75%. Hard hit percent, top 80%. He is a very good pitcher with some really good pitches and has the potential to be a top-of-the-line starter should a couple injuries hit in Atlanta. Atlanta has some depth in their rotation, which we'll talk about at the end of this video, and Chris Sale will slide in nicely into their rotation on opening day. He's also changed up his pitch mix since coming over to Atlanta. You can see that big drop in the orange is his sinker, and that's when he got traded from Chicago to Boston from the 2016-2017 season. I think Atlanta is going to have some interesting ideas on how they want to manipulate his pitch mix, maybe revert it back a little bit to what it was in Chicago, get a little more of that sinker involved, and see exactly where they're going to end up there. Atlanta has some really good player development, and I think Chris Sale is going to benefit a lot from going to that organization and seeing what they can do this offseason to try and refine his ability and get back a little bit more to that peak form. He's definitely a starting pitcher who has a lot of value regardless, but I think if he can go ahead and tap into that a little bit more, he's going to be a very, very good pitcher, and someone Atlanta is going to be very happy to have. Looking at Sale's career stats in Boston just reinforces that. From 2017 to 2023, a 46-30 record, 3.27 ERA, 12.7 strikeouts per nine, which is just asinine for a starting pitcher. You don't see those numbers very high at all nowadays. Granted, the strikeout is in, but Chris Sale was really the first guy to be a strikeout starting pitcher. That was his whole MO. That wipeout slider was something that hitters had a really hard time hitting, and Chris Sale now is going to bring that strikeout ability to an organization that knows how to develop. Although Chris Sale is going to be 35 next season, that doesn't mean you can't teach an old dog new tricks in baseball. I think the Braves are going to be able to tweak him a little bit and get exactly what they want out of him. He's a phenomenal pitcher and someone the Braves are definitely going to want to have this postseason. The player going back to Boston in this deal is Vaughn Grissom, a former top prospect. A lot of people had as the Braves' #1 prospect, especially heading into the 2022 season, who has not lived up to his potential since making his major league debut in 2022. Grissom was drafted out of high school in the 11th round in the 2019 draft by the Braves, signed for $347,000, which is more than what it's allotted, so the Braves liked him so much they took out of their pool money that is allotted to their draft picks and gave him some extra. So that just goes to show you that they really liked what Grissom had coming out of high school. He was a shortstop in high school, but it was never expected that he'd stay there long term. His fielding ability isn't great, and it makes sense to have a good defensive shortstop. The Braves had Andrelton Simmons for a while, and it goes to show you that defense at shortstop is valuable, even if you can't hit. The fact that he doesn't really have great defense at shortstop, even though he has an above-average arm, goes to show he's most likely suited for second base, third base, or one of the corner outfield spots. He's a solid all-around player. People expected him to be a little bit better hitter than he has been. We'll look at those stats at the major league level in a little bit, but he does have the ability, if he can tap into some really good contact skills, that he could raise his average up a little bit and be a solid hitter at the major league level. But for right now, based on where he has been these past 2 seasons, he's probably a bottom of the order guy, and the Red Sox are going to look to tap into that ability when he plays in 2024 with them. Grissom was a solid hitter in 2022 with a .291 batting average, .353 on base, and an OPS plus of 117. So he was an above average hitter across just over 150 plate appearances. It looked like he was maybe going to tap into his potential. 5 home runs, 5 stolen bases, had some speed, had some power. Things were looking good for him. He'd striked out a little bit more than people wanted, but you get that a lot with younger players. He was only 21 in the 2022 season, so it makes sense that he was striking out a little bit. He got rushed a little bit through the minor leagues. He was pretty developed for coming out of high school, but still, making your major league debut at 21 is no small feat at all. 2023 was rough for him, although his batting average was just only a little bit lower at .280. His on-base percentage dropped by over .04. His slugging dropped by almost a full point. So things were not looking great. His OPS plus was 78, and he was not walking at all. That walk rate dropped from 7.1% to 2.5%. And although he did lower his strikeout rate below 20, which is really solid, those numbers just weren't coming in to make people excited about what the future was. Although he didn't have enough at-bats to qualify for any of these stats, his walk rate was in the lowest 5% of the league. His chase rate was in the lowest 20%. Average exit velocity, the lowest 10%. Things were just not looking great for him, and he needed to have a bounce back year. It's a sophomore slump. I'm not ready to write him off yet, but the fact he didn't have a home run, he didn't have a stolen base, things just kind of limited him in 2023, and I think everyone's hoping that he can bounce back. He was an exciting prospect, and I don't think anyone's rooting ill against him, but 2023 was a down year for him. There's still some potential that he could break into things, but if you look at his StatCast page, there's a lot of blue and not a lot of red. His B-WAR also dropped significantly from .09 to -0.07, and a lot of that has to do with defensive ability. He was flat 0 WAR on the offensive side of the ball, but that -0.7 came from the defensive side of the ball. So if he really needs to go ahead and step up his defense, find a home position, he rotated between shortstop and second base. We'll see exactly where he ends up. Boston's going to try him a little bit of everywhere, but he really does need to go and find a defensive home and improve his defensive abilities if he wants to maintain an everyday role. Boston has that flexibility since they're not going all in right now, just a retool to see if they can get some value out of him because Sale doesn't fit in their plans, so we'll see exactly where he ends up in the long term. Now that we've talked a little bit about both players and how they fit into their teams, let's go ahead and grade this deal for both sides. For the Red Sox, I'm going to give this trade a B-. I think it fits into their plans well enough. They have a lot of starting pitching, and Chris Sale didn't fit into their future plans. Cooper Criswell is someone who is most likely going to make a decent impact at the major league level in 2023, and Brandon Walter and Chris Murphy provide decent depth who are already on the 40-man roster who could come in and eat innings if needed. Already at the major league level, they were facing a bit of a starting pitching crunch as well. Tanner Houck and Cutter Crawford were both guys who kind of bounced between the rotation and the bullpen last year, and there's kind of confusion of where they'd end up. Looks like both might end up as starters, and we'll see how that changes throughout the season, especially with Brian Mata, who has the potential to also start out of options, and I wouldn't be shocked to see him end up in the rotation and maybe see Tanner Houck come back down into a late inning role where I think he's better suited. Since they have a lot of pitching depth, and they have some decent depth in their minor leagues as well, I don't hate that they're getting rid of Chris Sale. I think with the injuries and the fact that their contention window isn't really right now, I mean, they could have a really good season and surprise some people, but right now it seems like their contention window is a little bit smaller. Getting someone like Lucas Giolito to kind of retool, maybe flip at a deadline is a good idea, and I really like what they're doing here. I think there's some potential for him to go ahead and be a solid starting pitcher, but I don't see this team making the playoffs anytime soon in 2024. Maybe 2025 if they can get some good players as well, but I think 2026 will really open their window when a lot of their top prospects come in, and I think if Vaughn Grissom can come in and be a good player and restore a little bit of his prospect status, he will be a very important piece to their future. I think he very happily slides into the bottom of their lineup at second base, and with Trevor Story manning shortstop, you don't have to worry about him playing shortstop unless he needs an off day. I think this is a perfect situation for them, and it will work out good for the Red Sox in the long term, especially if he can restore what he was as a prospect in the minor leagues and be a good hitter again. He needs to get on base a little more, walk a little more, and after that, he will be a solid piece who you might be happy seeing in the sixth hole of your lineup. And for Chris Sale at age 35 in 2024, especially with a lot of money, I don't hate this. For the Braves, I think this is a B+ trade. They get back a starting pitcher who has a lot of potential, and we've all seen what they did with a 40-year-old next season, Charlie Morton, put him into a very good position to be a good starting pitcher. I think this is a trade that makes a lot of sense. The Braves are known to be a good developmental organization, and getting a star pitcher with, granted, a decent injury history in Chris Sale is a good start. With Spencer Strider and Max Fried at the top of the rotation, I wouldn't be shocked to see Sale fit into that 3 or 4 spot in the rotation, be a solid pitcher for them, maybe not eat a ton of innings, because they do have a very good bullpen as well, and see exactly where that ends up in the long term. I think he has the potential to go ahead and restore some of the form he had before those injuries back in 2017, 2018, and even before that in Chicago. There's definitely the potential to be really good. They have a lot of rotation depth as well. Bryce Elder, Reynaldo Lopez I don't think will start, but I guess he technically could. You can also look at Ian Anderson coming back halfway through the season. Someone like Harrison Waldrep, who was our first-round pick in 2023 out of Florida. He is definitely someone to be on the lookout to make their major league debut in 2024. He was dominant in the minor leagues, and they already have a ton of other starting pitchers as well, like Alan Winans, AJ Smith-Shawver. They have a lot of depth. It's exactly what you want contending. People who can go ahead and get innings for you should injuries happen, which they inevitably do. This is a perfect trade for the Braves. I don't like that they're giving up Vaughn Grissom. He doesn't have a spot here in Atlanta, but I think they could have gotten a little more value out of him, or at least seen exactly what we could have done in 2024 before shipping away to another team. But sometimes you capitalize on value before it's too low. Thank you so much for watching this video. There's going to be 2 videos in the top right and top left you could hit if you're interested, and the baseball in the middle to subscribe to the channel. There's also a link in the description if you're interested as well. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.